Hi everyone, welcome to another Culture Northumberland podcast video chat. I've got Luke here with me this morning and we've just been having a lovely 30-minute chat about all things culture in Northumberland, the barriers, the difficulties, the bright spots, all the things. And the purpose of really us recording today is just to make it more transparent around the conversations that I'm having with artists and organisations at the moment. So right here in January 2024, and also to give Luke the opportunity to talk about what he does and what he's all about and where he is in Northumberland, what he's got in store for 2024. So I'll just start by asking Luke to introduce himself and his practice and what he's all about. I've just learned that he's been in Amble all of his life, which I didn't know. So this has been really lovely for me because I think you get a sense of people, over email, and now and again you kind of might meet up, but just to really have more space to hear from Luke has been really precious for me, and I know will be really interesting for you all watching as well. So welcome, Luke.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Yeah, I think
So
it's
would
a
you,
it's a post-COVID thing. I think we've been emailing each other for about 2 or 3 years, but we only met face to face last month. Yeah.
That's it, isn't it? And so the reason we met was because I invited you to a kind of a VIP event at Alnwick Playhouse, which isn't too far from you. And the opportunity there really was because Damien had the show there. It was a quiet school show. So I thought, why not invite some of the people that I've been emailing with, and then we can all connect just before Christmas. A bit like a Christmas do. It was quite
Yeah,
fun, wasn't it?
yeah. It was good. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. And you
Yeah,
met some people that you hadn't met before and some
yeah,
colleagues that you do know already.
yeah. It was really a good opportunity. Yeah,
Yeah, nice thing to do. It's nice to be in that lovely cultural building as well. I do think it is a very welcoming space. I
yeah,
know since the renovation and stuff, it just
mm,
has a
yeah.
whole different feel. It was great before, but it's brilliant now, and I do feel like it's a lovely space holder. So for those of you that don't know, I do a monthly co-working at Alnwick Playhouse. So sometimes it's like one or two people that come, and other times there can be more, but we just take over the bar once a month. The Wi-Fi's there. You can buy coffee from downstairs. It's a great space to be. And the dates are coming out for 2024 really soon, so watch out for that. But anyway, back to Luke. Luke, do you want to
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about who you are and
Yeah,
what your practice is?
yeah, so my name's Luke McTaggart. I'm a painter. I'm an artist based. I live in Amble. I'm based at the old bathhouse in Broomhill. I've got a studio there. I've been working freelance independently for a couple of years now. I got my degree from Northumbria University. I only really did about 6 months at university because I went to university in 2019 and was there for 3 months, and then COVID happened. So I did a lot of lectures like this online. But I went back. Great team at Northumbria. I really enjoyed my time there. Some great technicians as well. And I knew that I wanted to sort of work as an artist when I left. So I just threw myself in at the deep end and worked self-employed, sole trader. And I just started chipping away. I had an exhibition lined up at the Bailiff Gate Museum at Alnwick. And that was in November 2022. So I finished my degree and then just painted all summer, and did this exhibition at the Bailiff Gate, which was called Horizons. And it was about, I think I had about 50. I went a bit overboard. I had like 50 paintings in it or something like that. But it was a really good opportunity to have lined up. So I just jumped straight in, and then we were sort of, I knew a lot of artists around then, because I quite liked sort of visiting other artist studios and things, and I'd been to the bathhouse and I knew some of the artists there. And I actually got the exhibition at the Bailiff Gate through another artist friend of mine, Catherine Renton.
Oh
Um,
yes, I know
and yeah,
Catherine.
I know
Yeah.
Catherine, she's really good. And we actually got another artist, Neville Wilson. He's a printmaker from Amble. So the three of us had exhibitions one after the other at the Bailiff Gate, because we worked with Catherine Neal, she was a consultant at the Bailiff Gate at the time, and she kind of could really see that the Bailiff Gate needed to tap into the sort of artists that were really in the locale. So she lined us up for exhibitions one after the other, which worked really well. They all sort of complemented each other. And then probably the main thing that kind of leads me to where I am now was, it was actually, she's on the town council. She's the partner of Jim Donnelly, who I collaborate with, Kate. She came to the preview of my exhibition at the Bailiff Gate. And anybody from around here knows that there's sort of a bit of a rivalry between Amble and Alnwick. And she said to me, she said, "Oh, the exhibition's great, Luke, but when are you going to do something like this in Amble?" And I
Mm.
sort of laughed it off, and we kind of went on talking. But she'd planted that seed, and I thought, oh, could we do something like this in Amble? and that was kind of where the idea from the Dovecote exhibition, the Dovecote Street Show, that was where that sort of came from. So I'd gone away and I'd sort of been doing other things, and I sort of thought about it over a couple of weeks. And I put this project idea together. And Kate and Jim are both trustees at the Northumberland Theatre Company, which is based at the Dovecote Centre in Amble. And there's a couple of the theatre company have been based at the Dovecote Centre from about 2018, but there's also this Drywater Arts based in Amber. I think they've been based there from about the same time, and I was the intern there. I've had a lot of fortuitous things just happened, in the same week and things like that, because we got told when I was in sixth form, they said, oh, you've got to do a week of work experience, but you've got to organise it yourself.
Okay.
And I had scratched my head. I thought, I want to do arty things, but where do I go? And the same week, it had been advertised in the local newspaper, the Ambler. They said there's this new arts centre opening in Amble,
Oh,
and people said, "Oh, go and ask them if you can do
yeah.
something." And I messaged Francis and I said, can I come and do something here for a week? And I went for a week and I just stayed for about 3 years. So so I
It's
would,
such a treasure
yeah,
trove, isn't it? Like
yeah,
when
yeah.
I went just to do a workshop, I just really needed escapism from sort of being behind a laptop. So I went to a bookmaking workshop and then very quickly after a printmaking workshop, and I absolutely loved it. I loved spending time
Yeah.
with Francis and
Mm.
understanding the story and the history behind the centre and the kind of passion for the
Yeah.
strands of work that they've got there. It was just
Mm.
all happening kind of under the radar. And then I've
Yeah.
brought them into the Culture Northumberland fold a lot. So they
Mm.
do
Yeah.
post a lot on our Facebook group and we do get to hear about them, but I think people might just kind of bypass it and not realize how incredible it is to just
Yeah.
put into a
Yeah.
space like that.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous, isn't
And
it?
that was a problem that we also faced, because we found that at the bathhouse where I'd started to meet people through the old bathhouse, because I'd a friend of mine, Paul Henry, was based there for a while.
Yeah.
I used to have a sort of stall in his where we did the open studios. I think we got up to about 800 people a weekend at those open studio events. But
Yeah, I came along. It was just,
yeah, yeah,
I was not expecting it to be
yeah,
so busy. It was
yeah,
incredible. And I
yeah,
didn't realize how many artists were packed within
yeah,
all of
yeah.
the different rooms and outdoor spaces. It's really quite special. I thought it had all closed down, Luke. Is that
Yeah,
still kind of there
that
or?
was, yeah, it's me. So there's three of us are still based there. There's me,
Okay.
Gillian Lee Smith, and Ellie Davison Archer.
Yeah.
What happened was Paul and Helen Grayson, the glass artist, they both had the sort of most prominent spaces in the building. And they were sort of coming up to the end of their leases, and that they were reviewing that, and with the cost of living and things, that they decided to close their spaces. So
Mhm.
that was why that kind of got wound down.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so that was how that happened. But we're still based there,
Yeah.
but we can't do the big events because we don't have those big spaces now.
Oh, so you're
Um,
just all in one kind of part of it
yeah,
together,
we're
the
sort of
three
in
of
the
you?
back of the building, yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
it's, we're still there. We're still, have a presence, but there's sort of the shift of the new tenants. They're sort of more industrial scale,
Okay.
and fabricator. So it's not
Okay.
totally art
But it's
based
nice you
now.
could stay though, because
Yeah,
I thought at one point you all
yeah.
had to leave. So that's
Yeah,
quite
no,
nice in a
what's
way.
happening is that our landlord is he's currently in the process of building some new units in Amble. That's what
Okay.
that's about. Yeah, and we'd sort
Yeah,
of
okay.
agreed to
So and
go,
they
but
they would have a commercial like forward facing element or not?
yeah, similar to, but a few of us, it's a mixed development. A few of us just want studio spaces, and I think
To
sort
be.
of
Mm.
others would like sort of more retail focused bits, but that's sort of still in the pipeline. It's
Yeah,
not,
got you. Okay, it's
yeah,
super
yeah,
interesting, isn't it? And I think those
yeah,
opportunities and understanding where individual artists are at
yeah,
is really important. So I do get a
yeah,
lot of requests around studio spaces in specific
yeah,
towns and villages in Northumberland, and
yeah.
I point them to the research that I did. But to be honest, once I finished that research, it was probably out of date because
Yeah,
things keep
yeah,
happening all the
yeah.
time. So
That's the hard thing. It's keeping it
mm,
all keyed in and up to
I
date.
just
Yeah.
tell them to post on the Facebook group because I just kind of figure, well, there will be somebody on there that knows
Oh,
somebody or
yeah.
knows of something or
Yeah.
knows or is more kind of in touch with the development because there are
Yeah.
so many of you making
Yeah.
work in Northumberland.
I think
So
it goes back to that thing that we were talking about before we started recording, just how
mm,
there's these little pockets and it's very hyper local. And I think
yes,
Northumberland's a very large county, but it's
yeah,
very sparsely populated. So there's these little pockets, particularly on the coast, a very high density population, but they're spread out over quite large areas, and it's just connecting up these little pockets.
And it feels like you've been really seizing the opportunities of
Yeah,
partnership working. You've been kind
yeah,
of feeling into what
yeah,
would feel good for you and your
yeah,
values, where you are in
yeah,
your career.
yeah,
You've been asking really interesting
yeah,
questions and really generous questions, actually, of other practitioners and other organizations. I'd
yeah.
love to talk a bit about that, Luke, if you're
Yeah,
open
well,
to
that
it.
that comes back to what I was in the process of talking about with the Dovecot Street exhibition. So I put it to the theatre company, to the board of trustees, and I just said, look, I think there's an opportunity to do a big, significant exhibition of contemporary art in the town. It was the first sort of exhibition. There'd been little exhibitions that, I've done little pop-ups, and there's been exhibitions at Dry Water, but we wanted to do a really big exhibition. So I basically just listed all the artists I knew in Northumberland. Was what it
Wow.
was, and it wasn't exclusive. It was northeast sort of. It was a few artists from Newcastle and sort of further south in Hexham and things. But I just listed all the artists I knew. The theatre company said yes, we're behind this, so they gave us 3 weeks of their community room. They gave us that for free.
Okay.
Donated the space. And me and Jim kind of got together and worked it all out, and we put it to the town council, and said, would you consider supporting this, because we needed to actually turn it into an exhibition space.
Mm.
So we put in a grant request to them, and it was sort of close to the end of the financial year, and they had a bit of money left, and they said, yeah, we're willing to back this. And they paid, it was just under £1,000 in wood. It wasn't the full amount that we asked for, but thanks to MKM at Alnwick, was what we were ordering the wood. We explained that we didn't get the full amount, and they actually met the shortfall and
Oh,
donated an
amazing. So
extra
it's like a
£300 worth of
sponsorship.
wood. Yeah, yeah,
Amazing.
which we're
Yeah.
really grateful to them for. So it's all these sort of, you wouldn't think that they would, but I think it's because there's no precedent for sort of cultural things like this.
Kind of new.
Yeah, yeah. So organisations like town councils, parish councils have got pots of money there that they can consider. I think each town council and parish council has slightly different rules
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
how much, but they're willing to support things.
Yeah, and it's that
So
relationship building, isn't it? And them understanding what you're about and what that might encourage and bring in, because if it's
yeah,
new, it's hard to demonstrate what that
yeah,
might bring in.
yeah,
But actually, what
yeah.
now you've done, how many have you done? Because if you've done a couple of showcase
I've done a couple.
events.
So yeah, before that I got a small micro bursary from, it was Contemporary Visual Art Network North East. It's
Mhm.
now Art Network North East.
Yeah.
They run their amazing North East Artists Fund.
Mhm.
It's such a simple form to do. It takes less than
Really
10 minutes.
simple. Yeah, it's a good
It's
one.
it's amazing. And you just put in, for any activities you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. I think it's under £500. And I think they said we'd, under £300, we'd give it more thought. And I think under £100, they'll give you a decision within 7 days.
Mm.
So I put in for when they were, I think it was their first round of funding. I just said, that I would like a grant to just hire a space in the town and just put on a pop-up exhibition. And there was a small room in the harbour master, the old harbour master's building in Amble, was busy getting renovated and things. And a relative of mine knew Angela Woodburn, the commercial development manager, and she said, could they just rent the space just for a weekend? And she said, yeah, of course. So I got
Perfect.
this, I think it was £250 that I got from the micro bursary. And we just hired this space just as a kind of trial run. We knew about we were busy planning out the Dovecot, but I think at the time we hadn't had the grant, the town council hadn't met, so it was kind of in the pipeline. But we just wanted to do it as a kind of, to see for ourselves how many people we get in. And just on that weekend, I think it was crazy, because I think I threw the exhibition together in like a week. It was crazy, because I had to get the sort of, I think they had a new tenant lined up for the space, so it had to happen within like 2 weeks before they moved in. So I just quickly threw an exhibition together from a couple of artists I know, Catherine, Paul, and Neville, who I mentioned, and it was all work about the harbour and things. And we just threw it together, and we had like 250 people over the weekend. It was
Amazing.
amazing. So yeah,
That's
so
so,
that laid the groundwork for the Dovecot exhibition.
Yeah.
And it grew and grew and developed as we went along. And I think I might have started out with about 30 artists, and it ended up with 50 by the end of it. Um,
That's a lot of
yeah,
artist work to
yeah.
manage, isn't it? Yeah.
But it was just generally just people I knew. I said,
Yeah.
I'll put on this show, and we didn't want
Mm.
it to be a sort of very specific exhibition,
Hmm.
because I know that there's not really been things like this in the town. I almost wanted it to be like a
So a broad
exhibition of
stroke of a
everything.
showcase. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
amazing.
sort of a survey exhibition is what I called it, just for people in the town, in the area, to just come and see the breadth of everything
Mhm.
that's happened in the region. It opened on May 8th, 2023, and by May 28th, we'd had about 900 people through,
Incredible.
which was incredible. It was
And
beyond what we.
did you take it in turns to sort of invigilate? Was somebody always
Yeah,
involved in
so
doing chat and
the really great thing was, it was quite a lot of, it was about 20 of the artists were really within like 10, 15 miles. So a lot of the vast majority of those artists were willing to chip in a couple of hours. It was all unfunded other than the grant for the exhibition walls. They all chipped in and invigilated. The theatre company also has a pool of volunteers that help staff, because the community cinema is run out of the Dovecote, as well as when the productions are on at the Dovecote, they have a pool of volunteer stewards, a bit like the Playhouse.
yes.
And they were really helpful as well, and they chipped in. So we didn't. I thought I'd be sat there for 3 weeks twiddling my thumbs, but actually it flew by because there
It
was
was a real
loads of
community
people
effort,
chipping in.
yeah, and
Yeah,
exciting for
yeah,
Amble as well. I
yeah,
suppose, it's interesting to have that many artists involved because even if every artist brings one guest or two guests, you've already got a
yeah,
brilliant
yeah,
audience, and then you've
yeah,
got because
yeah,
it's in the town, isn't it? It's not on the outskirts or anything.
yeah,
It's in the town centre
yeah.
itself. So if people
You
might be
might
walking
stop bang in
past
the
and wonder what
middle.
it is, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, we aligned it with the Puffin Festival as well,
yeah,
which is it's the last weekend in May, and that's a project which it's the Amble Events Committee runs that, which just sort of combines the Development Trust, the Town Council, different cultural organisations. Dry
mm,
Water's quite involved in that. So we aligned it with the Puffin Festival weekend, and I think just over that weekend we had another 200 odd people through.
yeah,
We did a panel discussion in the morning about, because quite a lot of the artists were focused on climate change and the environment. So we had a panel on that in the morning, which was we had decent numbers for that. And then we did some film screenings in the afternoon. It was just a sort of wheelhouse of just try whatever we want kind of thing for
yeah,
this. We weren't tied in with any funding criteria. We just want to
yeah.
use it as a bit of an experiment. But now we've set the precedent for that. We are currently using all the data that we collected in terms of visitor numbers, what were the busiest days and things like that. We are currently using that in a funding application. So it's,
Perfect. Yeah, so you've got that to draw on. And
yeah.
was there a commercial element? Could people come and buy the work that was on display?
Yeah. So what we did was, we didn't put prices. That was a really controversial thing with some people. We chose not to put prices on the works, and worked on the basis that I generally find if somebody really wants to buy something, they ask.
Mm,
And there were, even without prices on, I think sort of 3 or 4 of the works decently priced as well, not
mm,
small.
mm.
And maybe 4 or 5 actually had sold through the
Yeah,
exhibition. Yeah. We did.
yeah.
We didn't take any commission or anything, because it wasn't really a commercial opportunity for us.
Mm.
But yeah, there was a couple of sales
I
through it.
just find it so interesting because we've got the Almouth Arts Festival close
Yeah.
by as well, and having been, part of that in terms of going along to it, just because it's,
Mm,
close to me, and I've kind of gone along, and I knew an artist that was exhibiting. It was her most lucrative time of year, and it was so
mm,
interesting, just the push towards that kind of commercial window where she knew and she could guarantee
yeah,
that people were going to come and buy that work in that kind of 2-day window, and it was a
yeah,
shock. The first year was a real shock. She
yeah,
made thousands of pounds, and she was like, wow, like I just didn't understand that that would be possible. And I do think
mm,
it's an interesting question, isn't it, when we're exhibiting work, how we
yeah,
feel about that. And I love that you just kind of went, okay, like it's price free, but let's see, because
yeah,
again, in that kind of experimental nature of the work that you were
yeah,
doing, and there's less pressure in some ways, but it's
yeah.
also that kind of figuring out
Well, It,
process.
it, it made it quite democratic, because we had, it was a real mix of different people, in terms of people that have been painting a couple of years, right through to people that we had a Royal Scottish Academician. Alphonse, my Alphonse Bytautas, my printmaking technician from university,
Oh,
gave me
okay,
a
yeah.
piece. Narby Price, it was
Oh yeah.
Newcastle, yeah, he gave a piece. So we had some like quite high profile names, but
Mhm.
not having prices on made it very democratic, you know, because it went
Yeah,
from
super
six,
interesting.
60 pounds, £60 to £6,000, but they were all on an even footing with nothing
Yeah.
on them. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. And so from that point then, do you feel like those audience members, those people kind of had somewhere else to go online? Did people kind of put like an Instagram handle or a website underneath, or did any of that stuff
Yeah,
happen?
so
'Cause I know you're really good at like promotions and sending me press releases, but one of the things that comes out of my research with Culture Northumberland is people really struggle to like hold their audiences online, whether that's on social media or the website. They're not really sure how to kind of keep them
yeah.
connected and what to do. So I'm curious.
Yeah, it's interesting question. Because I'd set up accounts for all three to manage it, and they grew. They're not like amazing followers, but it was quite a good focused audience that we got on those accounts. I think the main thing, it was probably not an online audience. It was more, it drew people out the woodwork.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of people around here, but it was just an event, and it just brought people along, and it brought people just said, "Oh, you know, can I be in an exhibition?" and things.
Okay,
Just
nice.
things like that. It just brought everybody out the woodwork, and that was why we started doing the crits in September.
Mhm,
So I said to Jim, I said, you know, we really need to do something regularly.
mhm,
One of the things I did at university was crits,
mhm,
CRITS, and it's just basically you stand around and talk about each other's work. You
mhm,
know, at university, we go to each other's studios, and I said, well, what about doing something like that? You know, it's a good way. It's democratic. Anybody can come. Bring a piece of work along if you feel like it.
mhm.
Members of the public can come along and ask questions if they want, and we'll just make it a totally open forum. So we started those at the end of September, and I thought we'd maybe get about 12 or 15 people, and we had 24 at the first one. And
Mm.
then we had another in October, and we had 27 at that one. And then our one in November, we gotten up to 30, and we got like 10 or 12 new signups each time. So in 3 months, we got a mailing list of 59 people
That's
just in the
great.
area. But it's of people that will come to events. It's not a huge number, but it's quite a focused audience of people that will come to things.
And
Yeah.
for you personally as an artist, what do you get from that feedback? So do all 27 people feedback on your artwork, or do you just do swaps and
Yeah.
like each
Well,
kind of feedback to each other?
yeah, the way we do it is we don't force people to bring a piece of work.
Mm,
They can come and just listen if they want, but we
mm,
give it totally open floor. We just put a chair at the front.
yeah,
And what happens is I make a list of everybody in the order that they come in, and I just call people up, and it works out about 5 minutes each.
mhm,
Everybody brings their piece up. They can speak about it if they want, or they can just field questions, and it just gives a chance for the audience members, other artists, practitioners, members of the public to ask questions. And they sort of take on a life of their own because we don't plan them. We don't know what's going to come out of it.
mhm.
We've had poems and everything. We even had a couple of film screenings in the room next door. And we put an emphasis on it being supportive. It's constructive criticism is what we want. And we've been really amazed with the response. And we're starting them up again. It'll be January 30th is the next one.
Okay.
And we'll hopefully have a guest speaker for that. But yeah, they've been really good, and particularly on I think maybe Facebook's probably the best because it's such a local audience. Local Facebook, like the Amble Matters, Amble Community, these kinds of groups are the best for getting the word out about that. But also, word of mouth is king, I think, really. And it's just sort of people at openings and things. Oh, have you been to this? Have you heard about this? I think word of mouth kind of rules in a place like this.
Mm.
But I do try and capture them, particularly for Instagram things. I do try and capture them and put them out there. It's just about saying that there's something happening here. You know, there's something going on in Amble, and I think that's what you just want to create a buzz about something. You want to
Mm.
give the sense outside of the bubble that there's something going on.
Come into, yeah, and there's a real momentum by the sounds of it from where you started and what you've been running with, but in a really measured way. Like
Yeah,
sounds like you're very spacious in your practice, like you give things time, you reflect a lot, and then you kind of build on the momentum of what you've
Yeah,
learned from the last
yeah.
event.
But it's also, the support of everybody.
Mhm.
Everybody is just so willing. That's what I
Yeah,
always say
a
about,
very
like,
supportive community,
Susie.
yeah. Mhm.
Susie, you just say something to Susie. Yes, how can we do it? It's just this, like, positivity that you get. I
Mm,
think when you do have to put your neck on the line a little bit, but you get rewarded, in my experience, if you do
yeah.
that.
And it's interesting you should mention, Susie, because we were chatting a little bit about Annick Storyfest before we hopped on the call. So we were both invited to be part of something that could be potentially bigger for Annick in the future, and kind of focusing on the unique buildings and spaces and art that happens in Annick. And
Mm,
interestingly, in terms of what you're doing in Amble, and the conversation that we had at the Christmas show was like, there's a lot of similarities between the two towns, i.e., there's no NPOs, there's very little in terms of project grant money either from Arts Council. So everybody's kind of grassroots trying to make things happen,
yeah.
on a wing and a prayer sometimes. But there's a lot of similarities between the two towns. And we're curious about whether there's a natural partnership there with, not involving absolutely everybody that works culturally in both spaces, but the people where they have a natural connect. We're
Mm,
curious
yeah.
about it, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. It was something that I found when I was asked to become a trustee. It was through the exhibition, actually. Jean Humphreys, our chair, I invited her along to the opening night for the exhibition, and she pulled me aside and said, "I'd like you to think about coming on the board at the Bailiff Gate." And I sort of gave it some thought through the summer, and she asked again at the AGM in September, and I was co-opted onto the board. And just even in the couple of months that I was on the board, I knew Susie by that point, and was talking with Susie, and then just going onto the board and talking with, particularly with Linda Wen, who's she's the Annick Town Council representative on the board. I had quite a lot of conversations with her, and between her and Susie and Louise, the company secretary, between all these different people, I started to realize, well, actually, the problems that we're facing and the hurdles that we've got, they're not specific to Amble. Annick's got these problems too, and I do think there are natural partnerships starting to emerge there, because Jim Donnelly, my collaborator, he's involved with the Storyfest. He's on the
Okay.
board, and there's a lot of sort of crossover, and even just through these sort of tenuous things like just knowing each other, there's a lot of links that are sort of emerging, and I do think that Amble and Annick, I think that that's going to converge in the coming
Yeah,
months
it's
and
really
years.
interesting to lean in, isn't there? That kind of space around Annick Storyfest's first year, and the really robust evaluation that they did on who attended and how it all felt, and then the work
Yeah,
that you're doing as well. And then,
yeah,
the nature of a festival is there's a whole year in between times, so there's quite a lot of space to think and kind of wonder what's possible. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what we
yeah,
can draw on and what we might be able to pull out. I know that you've spoken a little bit about promotions, and you're really good at sending Beth and I a press release and saying, this is what's coming up. Here's the press release. Here's a couple of images, which makes our job really easy. But I wanted to ask, in terms of what Culture Northumberland can offer and should offer moving forward. Obviously, we do that. We can turn those press releases into newsletter items or blog pieces. We
mm,
can do
yeah,
conversations like this and kind of roll them out. But for you as an individual artist and the way that you're working
yeah,
in collaboration, what else do you feel Culture Northumberland could offer, especially if we had a more kind of robustly funded
yeah.
project to kind of plug
Yeah.
into? What would you be
Well,
looking
I
for?
think you both do an amazing job with the means that you've got. It is really amazing what you do with Culture Northumberland, because I think that the strength of it is that it is a central hub for information that is backed by a local authority body, by Northumberland County Council. That carries weight amongst people, because there's if you ask for information, they say, "Oh, check the council, they'll have it on." I think because you've got that official backing, that gives it a level of credibility. But we all talk about, sort of in the area, all the artists I know, we need like a central hub for information. And I always refer people to Culture Northumberland, because it's there, it's a vehicle, you're pushing it, but I think it needs people to know that it's there and to use it. So I think maybe just more, we all as artists need to promote Culture Northumberland. because it's there.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's an existing vehicle,
Mm,
and I think there's a risk, and I know I talked about this with Paula and Francis, that there's a risk that every couple of years something comes along and it just duplicates. Like, oh, we'll do another directory of, like you were saying about the studio space. You think, oh well, we'll try and connect everything up, and then in a couple of months it's out of date.
mm,
Um, but Northumberland, Culture Northumberland, it's quite agile. It's there. You're very responsive, and I think that as artists, we need to promote Culture Northumberland and sort of recognise it as the central hub for information.
mm,
Um, and if any improvements, I think there's a gap for some kind of. I think we talked about this on LinkedIn. I'd left a couple of comments to you about having some kind of. I think you called it a clash diary, sort of
mm.
some kind of culture calendar for
Yeah.
Northumberland, where we could just, a simple Google form or something. If we had an event coming up, we could submit it and it would go on, and
Mm,
anybody could just go on this calendar and we just see what's on in the whole of Northumberland.
mm.
It will probably
That would
get a
be
bit
so
overwhelming, but yeah.
useful, wouldn't it? Because
Yeah,
also there are then those opportunities. So when Trina and I worked together on her Creative UK funded project, which is really around funding research for artists, one of the things we decided to do is very quickly create a flyer that could be handed out at Almouth Arts Festival. It was
yeah,
just like, it was so obvious, that we wanted to get the information out. When people picked up that flyer, they were directed back to the Culture Northumberland website,
yeah,
and it was all there and it was all possible. But it was her and I talking that made us realize that that would be a
yeah,
good opportunity, rather
yeah,
than her being able to access something to
yeah,
see all of the opportunities. Because yes, she's only one person, but if she could have linked up with multiple people and kind of posted a few flyers through the post or whatever, then they had them at their events. There's those sorts of cross promotional
yeah.
opportunities if we know when the events are for sure.
Yeah, it's just, and it links back to the just, large area and dense population sort of pockets. It's
Mm-hmm.
just getting the word out between things. It's quite
Yeah,
a titanic effort sometimes
yeah.
to just push something, to just push one event.
I think
Um,
when people are doing rural touring as well, so like obviously you've mentioned NTC, and I know November Club go to quite far away places, and it would be lovely to think that if there were individual artists that had business cards or flyers that could be kind of left on audience seats or
yeah,
something like that, just to try and cross promote people's
yeah,
work and what's
yeah,
happening and what's available. There'd be something to think about. I think your suggestion of a Google form is definitely possible. I've just experimented in one of my projects this year with a Google Calendar that is downloadable to your personal calendar. So people are telling me that it's working. So the idea is that they go on and then they can literally just add the events to their phone calendar
yeah.
like there and then. So these are like Zoom calls that I'm hosting, but I think the same thing would work for a Culture Northumberland clash diary. I think we just have to be really careful around how that information was submitted, so that we said we're not liable for any mistakes. But if you
Yeah,
fill in the
yeah,
Google form, we're going to take it directly
yeah,
from that, plug
yeah,
it into a Google Calendar, and then people can download it to their
yeah.
phones or just look at it online. Maybe that's a way to do
I
it.
think it could quite easily become very unwieldy. I think, yeah, there would
I
have to
think
be.
it would be unwieldy, especially certain weekends of the year, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they would have to, even if it were just, but if you could filter it and just say, I want to see all the exhibitions on in Northumberland, and
Mm-hmm.
break it down in certain ways and have
Yeah.
certain clarity about what things could go on, because that is probably the broadest sentiment amongst all the artists, creative practitioners, cultural professionals that I know, is that just it's so hard to keep up to date with things in
It
Northumberland, is what
is,
I
it
find. Yeah,
is. And I feel like there's a real mix of how people promote and where people promote. So we've
yeah,
been doing the Culture Northumberland work that we've been doing around promotions for 3 years now, but I'm still labouring the point of, if you tag us on Twitter or Facebook, it will get shared, and it will get shared more than once. And there's still only a handful of organisations and artists that
yeah,
do the tagging. But I'll still get emails, saying, oh, there's this. I'm
yeah,
like, if you tag us there, you get that share as well, as like
yeah,
6,000 plus people could potentially
yeah,
see it. So it's not difficult to do. It's just reminding people that we're
yeah,
there. And maybe we've got a job around comms, with the specific comms people within organizations, but also with individuals, to remind people of the simplistic nature of
yeah.
a 2-second tag is going to get you to reach a much bigger audience. And we'll do that multiple times if we're there. We just started a new model. It was like a soft launch before Christmas, which I know you know about. So on our Substack, which is now our new home for our mailing list, we started a membership opportunity for individual artists. So it hasn't launched to organisations yet, but for individual artists, they can pay £35 a year to have a special feature that's emailed out to everybody and multiple social media posts with Beth's expertise plugged in. So one of the things around working with Beth is because she's such a skilled content creator, sometimes it can just lift that copy a little bit that an artist sends. And she might say, have you also got a headshot? Have you also got 3 more photographs to kind of try and unpack this more? She understands where that information might land and how it might get more people engaged and more people following that artist's specific social media. So that's the aim, that we disseminate it and we support them, but that then that audience member goes and follows your mailing list or your social media or however you want to do it. So it's been really interesting to see. So I think we've got 7 people signed up at the £35, and obviously that's like a year's support. Well, it's support within a year, so Beth's there and kind of supporting those people to kind of get that information out. But it was a real test, and for me it was like, I feel I would pay that. So being at this stage in my career, if someone said for £35, Claire, you can have this, I'd be like, here's my money. You know, it just felt like easy. But one of the things that I'm unsure of is how it lands with everybody else, especially in a cost of living crisis, because we've all got kind of different income streams. We're all kind of working from different places. And I wanted to ask you about that, Luke, like what you think about that opportunity, if you think it's something that you could do, would want to do. You know, would you do it if it was funded, for example? Like if I got a sponsor to sponsor 10 artists and you all got it for free, would that be more accessible? Or would you right now be like, okay, yeah, I can pay the £35 and do that? How does it
Yeah,
fit?
it would definitely be something I would consider if it was funded. Well, I think everybody would say that, but I think it's more so
No, but
it's like,
it's just
yeah,
where you are and
yeah,
how you
yeah,
see that
yeah,
opportunity, because we will still continue to promote
yeah,
your work. It's not
yeah,
like we
yeah,
say we won't. This is just
yeah.
bespoke
It's an
stuff.
add-on, yeah. I
Mm.
suppose it's like who do you want to reach? Because if it's a commercial standpoint, I want to reach people that buy my paintings, really. And you know,
Mhm.
if your mailing list is typically other artists, you know, other artists typically don't buy paintings really because we're all, you know.
Interesting. I
But
like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
I know. So I don't. I mean, it's not a total given, but yeah, I suppose that's it. But then I don't know if the Culture Northumberland mailing list is exclusively other artists. You know, is it you know, or do audiences know? Do you know art lovers? Do they see Culture Northumberland as a kind of destination for things like this?
Well, it's a
No,
really
yeah.
interesting, and I have seen a shift in tourism the last little while. I did a piece for a magazine that was specifically a tourism magazine, and it was to try and promote Culture Northumberland as a place. Like if you're a visiting tourist,
Mm,
and that all flowed out of a conversation with Penny at Old School Gallery, because she was really open and honest with me about how much tourism brings
yeah,
into their
yeah,
business. And I was really taken aback, you know, and then I saw it from a different angle. I visited lots of the kind of hotspots over the summer as part of my research. So when we were up in Bamborough, for example, you know, the shelves of anything, you know, souvenirs and gifts were just empty. They were just clear. There was nothing left. And I was like, oh, there are so many tourists coming into these spaces, and we haven't yet found a way to make the most of that, you know, to try and kind of commercialize some of our practice, either whether that's seasonally or all year round. There's a bit of a mismatch. So yeah, I have been making shifts to try and get more people on the mailing list. There's also been a really interesting shift in testing content. So when Sycamore Gap, the tree was felled, I was really compelled to write a piece about that, and to also put something out where people could leave their memories and leave any links to artwork or shops and stuff that they had, because I was getting a lot of attention from Americans
yeah,
who were following the story in the press and then needed a place to land. And so I directed them to the Substack, and then they were really supportive. And then one of them actually became a paid member. So even though she's not in Northumberland, she
yeah,
wanted her artwork to be seen by people in Northumberland, which blew my mind. It's a
yeah,
power of the internet. You know,
yeah,
was it what we were set up to do? Absolutely not. But has it happened anyway? Yep. And it's fine,
yeah,
you know? So it's like really interesting to me how things could be funded going forward. And I've still got to fathom out what we could do for organisations. But my big dream is to have everybody's mailing list within my mailing list. So Annick Playhouse, for example, would just give me their mailing list and I would import it. Whether I could
yeah,
actually do
yeah,
that or not, I
yeah,
don't know. But I'm thinking, you know, tens upon tens, over 100,000 emails of everybody connected to
Yeah.
culture in Northumberland, the people that live here, the people that visit, the people that work. That's the big vision. Watch this space.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, yeah,
But
it's a
yeah,
funny
it's
one.
interesting to hear where you're coming from with it. Like, what would be
Yeah.
interesting
But
for you to plug in?
yeah, even that's not a given, because sort of from a commercial standpoint, if the typical profile of the people that maybe buy my paintings are like they're sort of new Northumberlanders,
New
new
Northumberlanders, yeah, that's a whole
Northumbrians.
thing.
Yeah, it's like sort of people that have moved here within the past year to 5
Yeah,
years.
and fallen in
And
love with it, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
and so that is a typical profile. And again, how do you and they're probably the sort of people that are more keyed into social media. So then maybe it's more people that are rooted in the area that have lived there, or maybe they're the ones we try and reach. It's sort of when you do the sliding scale of sort of price points and things like that, it is quite interesting, the different sort of audiences you reach. Yeah.
It is interesting. It is interesting. And I do think that it's really hard with valuing our work. Like there's something specific to Northeast based artists where we really struggle to kind of put a value on our work and what we do. And it's a really interesting debate, and one I think that we should spend a lot more time in. I know when I speak to other artists, like I've spoken to Yvette Jar recently, and she's been asked to showcase at the Venice Biennale. And I was like, oh, wow, that's, it's absolutely incredible, like really amazing. Will there be a price point on the work? And she said, oh, it's not that sort of thing, but obviously profile wise it brings in
Yeah,
lots of people to
yeah,
kind of the
yeah,
style that she works in, and the other pieces that she might have for sale. But yeah, it's super interesting, isn't it? I know a friend in America, she's just showcased in a really high profile exhibition in New York. And again, she was like, well, I just put a silly price tag on because I figured
yeah,
why not? Like I would let it go for that, but I don't really want to let it go. So I just stuck a silly price.
yeah,
And I just loved that. It was really just like honest and open. And she was like, I don't
yeah.
expect anyone to pay it, but if they do, I'm
Yeah,
going to let it
yeah,
go.
yeah.
So yeah.
I'm going up to Edinburgh on Friday for it's the
Okay.
preview night of the. I got a painting accepted for the Royal Scottish Society of Painters in Watercolor. So it's a
Oh
show at the
wow.
Royal Scottish Academy. So, and that's another thing where, and I don't know if it'll sell or not, but it's more. It's almost like a way of, I almost consider it like a marketing budget, expense, because it's a profile raising thing to get a painting into a show like that.
Yeah, for
There's a
sure.
couple
That's
of me,
exciting.
Gillian Lee Smith, who I know you'll be speaking to. She had a piece in as well. And it's just a kind of tick on your CV sort of thing. But
Mhm.
things like that really add to anybody looking to buy work. They look for these sort of official credos and things, and it
Okay,
does
so
help
you could
raise
put
your
that on your
profile.
website to
Yeah,
say you've
yeah,
been showcased
yeah,
there. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And so are you applying for quite a lot of opportunities like that, Luke, at the moment? You just sort
Yeah,
of tick them off as you
yeah.
go.
Yeah, in terms of paint, I mean, I applied for. There's a couple of regional ones. So there's the amazing, the Woodhorn Open Call, which
Yes.
comes around that's fantastic, and I think
Yeah,
we've
it's great. I've been
pretty
on the
much.
decision-making panel with Liz and Nabi
Yeah,
before, and it's like a whole day, when we've got to decide what's in, what's not in, where things go, how it all is. I mean, it's
yeah, yeah.
incredibly well organized.
Huge effort. I said to Paramjit, the coordinator, I said, because it was when we were organising the Dovecote was the same time Woodhorn was coming around.
Oh, okay.
And the Dovecote was 50 artists. I think they get something like 150 artists, and then they get like three
Yeah.
pieces off of everybody. So it was something like nearly 300 bits of work they had to sort through. And I
Yeah.
said, I don't know how you do it, because
I
50
think
had
it's
me.
really amazing to go and visit it though. Like I think just to be in those spaces because they're quite expansive spaces. Like it's a beautiful gallery. It's such a charismatic building. And then when there's kind of sculptural pieces mixed with textile pieces, mixed with visual, I just think
Yeah,
it's such a
very
joy, isn't it,
diverse.
to go
Yeah,
along? Yeah. What's the
yeah.
theme this year?
I think it's Northumberland now. So because I think it's the 90th anniversary of the Pittman Painters
Is it
founding.
okay?
So
Yeah.
it's all about your environment now and things like that. So yeah, so that'll be, I think, the drop-offs next week for that. So that should
Yeah.
open in February.
Hmm.
It's normally about the middle of February. But yes, there's that. I submitted. The Baltic has done another open submission. They did it
Oh
I think it
yeah.
was in partnership with Phoenix this year. They
Okay.
done they did one. I think it sort of got cut short from COVID. I think the first one, but they've done another one. So I submitted for that. I think I hear back on Friday for that. But yeah, there's quite a few that we all submit to, sort of the painters that I mix with. There's the Royal Scottish Academy will be coming up next year. in March this year. And then there's quite a few at the Mall Galleries in London, which is like the main. It's the Federation of British Artists. So it's the Pastel Society, the Royal Society of Portrait Painters, Royal Society of Oil Painters, Royal Society of Watercolor Painters, Society of Wildlife Artists, and I think the Society of Graphic Fine Artists, or
Wow.
then the New English Art Club. And those 7 organizations are like the main arts painting organizations in the UK, and they sort of hold annual exhibitions every year, and they're quite established societies. I think the New English Art Clubs might be the oldest one,
Okay.
maybe about 200 years old. But they're the kind of big, if you get into that, you've made it sort of thing. And then like
Wow.
the Academy, the Royal Academy Summer Show and things like that. Yeah.
Mhm. It's quite nice in a way because there's that driver, isn't there? Like throughout the year, you've got these different
Yeah.
deadlines to be working to, and then you can kind of weave in other bits of your work around that. I'm just thinking, we're here in January 2024, looking
Mhm.
forward to maybe January 2025. What
Mhm.
can you kind of see? Like, what would your future self look back on this year, and kind of what would be the big highlights, do you feel like? Do you feel like you know where you're headed and you
Yeah,
you know
we're
what
in.
you're up to?
Yeah, yeah. So we're hoping to put on at least one more show at the Dovecote. We're talking with a funder at the moment about how we're going to do that. So that'll be on. I'll tell you the Dovecote Street show. Dovecote Street Arts now is the
Okay,
handles on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or X, or whatever we're calling it.
perfect. On X,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, so you'll find information on that. I'm looking forward to more of our crits and seeing where
Mhm.
they go,
That
because it
sounds
is.
really valuable. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
they're totally sort of audience-led and artist-led, and they've generated their own steam just over the 3 that we've done.
Mhm.
So I'm really interested to see where they go. I'm interested to see some of the shows at the Bailiff Gate that I'm involved in, on the board of trustees there, because they've got an amazing team of volunteers. We only have one paid member of staff, and we have 51 volunteers.
Incredible. Yeah.
It's incredible the work they do. Woodhorn, I'm really interested to see the kind of, because they've grown. I think they started out with maybe 100 submissions, and they've grown it and grown it and grown it. I think this is the 5th year that they've done it. So we're all really interested to see sort of what benchmark they reach
And
this year.
especially the influx of new artists. We were talking
Mm,
about this before we started recording, weren't we? That there has been this influx of new artists really
yeah,
inspired by
yeah,
moving to Northumberland, like
yeah,
Amble, Berwick, like lots of places
yeah,
really. But there's been like a real shift I've
yeah,
seen since we've
yeah,
been here. Is it 7 years now? Might be coming up 8 years. It feels a long time, but yeah, it is really shifted. It felt like it was just like a quiet town, and you were just kind of like watching the wind blow down the street. And then
yeah,
everything seems to
yeah,
have really shifted, and there
yeah,
seems to be more emerging and more people celebrating the
yeah.
art that's possible in these little pockets now.
No, Amble's an interesting kid, because I always joke that, because I'm 23, and it's in the 23 years I've lived here, like art's only a fairly recent thing. It's sort of the past sort of maybe 5 or 6 years. I always joke that the only art you would ever see was in the window of Young's wallpaper shop. There was a fisherman painter, Jimmy Thompson, really good painter. They used
Yeah.
to sell his work for him because there were no galleries to show his work. So they showed
Oh,
it in the upstairs of this wallpaper shop. And that was the
wow.
only art I saw as a kid growing up, was this
Yeah.
paint. They would change the painting every month in the window.
Wow.
And
And then
then
you would go upstairs to see more.
yeah, yeah.
Cool
And then,
story.
yeah, so that was, growing up, that was all I saw. And then, Dry Water opened, and then just all this sort of stream of
Sculpture
different
Trail launched a
organizations.
couple of
The
years ago.
Sculpture
Yeah,
Trail,
you're
there's all
doing.
this investment that's come in, and now there's all these people. It's crazy, just the change in that short space of time, how many artists are here
It's
in
lovely. It's
the
lovely as
bathhouse.
well that we can still say, like, come on in, there's space for you, come
Yeah,
on in, like experience it,
yeah,
be inspired by it, have a coffee, come to
yeah,
your sessions. There's a real invite, a real generosity of spirit in the
yeah,
people in the town and in the work that you're doing. And I think the two are probably linked. I've
yeah,
always felt that visiting Amble myself, where you feel part of something, whether you go on a really quiet day or whether you go at the height of tourist season. Like, I do feel it's very spacious and very welcoming as a place, and I feel like it inspires a lot of people.
I don't think that's just Amble. I think that's Northumberland. I think
Yeah.
we're all, welcome and friendly
Yeah.
people in Northumberland,
It's
which is
true.
brilliant.
It's true. Yeah, brilliant. Great, Luke. Well, that's brilliant. I mean, I just feel like I've learned so much in terms of you and your practice, but I've also had some really interesting ideas presented in terms of what we can do to better support the infrastructure
Yeah.
that you guys need to kind of carry on talking and working together. So, well, we can stop recording there unless there's anything else you wanted to say to anybody
No,
else
I
watching.
just want to say well done for what you and Beth and Wendy and Layla, what
Oh,
everybody
thanks,
does,
Luke.
because I think you do an amazing job, and it is hard to, punch above your weight with the funding and things like that. But, and to all the artists watching, we need to support Culture Northumberland. We need to
Yeah.
promote it. Yeah, no
Do
more
the tags,
gentrification.
talk,
Yeah,
yeah, all that
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
stuff because yeah, generosity breeds generosity and we're here,
yeah.
we've built up the network. A funny story, but there was a network existed before our project and the guy lives in Australia now and he gave us the network. So I can't remember exactly what it was. He's called Mark, but he had built up this Twitter following and a Facebook following and he just literally gave them to us. So that was our head start. And then it's obviously snowballed from there. So when I was first building the Facebook group, it was like really struggling, 30 members and then 32, and now it's over 500 on there. And
Yeah,
these are all people that live, work, or want to work in Northumberland.
yeah.
So if you're not on the group, come on in, follow Luke on the social media that is mentioned, and watch this space for
Yeah,
opportunities
I've
to
got
get
I've got my
involved in
own social. I'm just
as
Luke
well. Oh,
McTaggart on
great.
social media. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but yeah, LinkedIn, everything. Yeah,
you're on
but
there. Yeah, good stuff.
yeah.
All
No,
right. Well,
I
thanks
think
so
I
much,
think that
Luke.
it's synchronicities. I think you're on the right path when you get all the right people come out at the right times and the right opportunities. It all
Mhm.
sort of works out when you're on sort of
Yeah, and it
the
sounds like
beat.
you're a real magpie for opportunity, so a good
Yeah.
person to know. So if anyone's watching this and they're keen, just drop Luke a
Yeah.
line because I know he'd
Just
be
get
really
in
open to
touch,
that.
yeah, because we do. I try and because I know the sort of group that we get with the crits, I can do a targeted sort of thing of exhibitions and opportunities. So I
Mm,
can't list everything going on in Northumberland, but if I think that it's something people are interested in, I try and put it on the mail out.
yeah,
So yeah, so just get in touch if
great.
you want to be on the mailing list. Yeah,
Oh, well, thanks so much, Luke. I'll hopefully see you really soon in one of your
yeah.
spaces, or online anyway. Thanks again.
Thanks, Claire.